And the other thing that I really learned was the fact that the work doesn't end after the talk. It's the starting point for amplifying my message. That talk has given me a lot of discipline to leverage. How do I use that? How do I share it? How do I use it in other things that you do? So you constantly want to be able to have a look at it. So the way that I summarized it in my head, giving that talk, was that passion plus discipline gives the impact. And passion without discipline is pointless. Welcome, everybody, to Passion Institute podcast. I'm Shivani Gupta and I'm your host. I recently had an opportunity to realize a 10-year dream. It's been on my vision board for 10 years in a row, year after year. I do it every January, and each year it's been to give a TEDx talk. Anyway, I had the opportunity to give it. I was invited to give that, and I flew over to the Philippines from Australia and gave that at the end of 2024. And I've had a bunch of people ask me, what were the lessons that you learned? So this particular podcast, if this perhaps is a dream of yours for a year or 10 or 30, or if you really wanted to improve as a leader and as an entrepreneur, the way you speak and prepare for those key messages, whether it's with 5 of your key leaders or giving a state of nation to all of your employees and your teams and the leaders within it, I hope you can apply one of these or more of these lessons in there. The first one was, and the TED Talk, if you want to watch it, we will also put it into the notes of this particular one. It's called Passion Without Discipline is Pointless. I've been talking about passion for a long time. And it was important for me to couple that with the fact that without discipline, it's pointless. So when we do that and we look at passion, what the discipline part also means is that the preparation, if we don't put it in as leaders and entrepreneurs, we have missed opportunities. And so passion's essential, but without that discipline and that preparation, sometimes when we go, yeah, I know the message that I need to prepare. Imagine me going up to a TED Talk, not having actually done any preparation. It just wouldn't land. And so as a leader and entrepreneur, we spend more time preparing slides than sometimes really preparing the narrative, our body language and our tone, which we know, according to the data and research, is 93% of our communication. So it's really important to make sure that you do that. So I really learned the importance of scripting better, practicing more, and refining, even looking at words and going, is there any point of having that word in that sentence? Does it actually add or take away from the message that I want to do? One of my other things that I learned is that the more disciplined I got, the more confident I got. You know, the confidence doesn't just come from passion. It actually came from the discipline. So the more you prepare, the less that you rely on improvisation, the better it is. And by disciplining and practicing more, it also took some of that stage fright, even though that was there, but it helped me come across a lot more confidently as well. The other thing I learned is simplicity is key. And we always talk about this KISS principle, keep it simple, stupid, or keep it, simple. So it's really important to be able to go that simplicity is key. There was only so much message I could get across in 12 minutes. So TEDx audiences are very clear. They're usually very highly educated. They like more relatable, clear ideas rather than lots of jargon. And so I really had to think about how can I craft a talk that strips down that message in essence, but still appeals to the intellectual part. And so when you think about the people that you might be presenting to, your colleagues at an executive, to a board, to investors, depending on if you're a leader or entrepreneur, to your staff all the time, how do you strip the message down so it doesn't sound too basic, but you have the discipline to avoid any overloading it with more and more and more details, which we sometimes have a tendency to do. Timing was everything. I knew that there was only a very limited time. And so it was very important to stick to the discipline and stick to the core ideas and really respect the clock. And that is also so important in businesses, that if we've given people 30 minutes, let's not go for an hour and 10 minutes. Let's really time it. Let's get to the core essence of the message that you want to do, and keep editing your message until you go, yeah, that's the message that I want to be able to do. I also hired a coach to help me really get that message across. And one of the things he said to me that really resonated with me is that sometimes when we're speaking to an audience, for example, or even a virtual audience or a live audience. But TED, these will be things that are recorded and people will be watching it 2, 5, 10, 20 years later. I was like, wow, the gravitas of that really hit me. Now, people might not be recording your message as a leader or entrepreneur. Maybe they are, but they might not necessarily be recording. But what is the message that you want them to be thinking about when they're driving into work? Or they're going, wow, I really need to think about that linking into the work that I do. So it starts to create alignment in what they do. So how do we actually get people focused and channeling the fact, and how do we cut out all of the stuff that is non-relatable, non-important, irrelevant? And you go, why would I have that in the first place? We do. When we start to put something together, we actually add lots of things, and the beauty of it was what you actually took away at the end of that. I also noticed that I will rehearse some of my speeches, but I've never rehearsed as much as I did for this particular TED Talk, and rehearsal is non-negotiable. So I would have done it alone. I did it with my coach. I did it in front of friends. I did it in front of family. I even presented to the tree in my garden. That sounds super weird. And so when you've got that really important message that you want to, how many times have you rehearsed it? Don't do this as a one-off. Make sure this daunting task that you have feels very natural, feels well practiced. People know and they can see when you put the effort in and when you haven't. The other thing is that emotional connection, whenever you're speaking, and there is this beautiful woman who was actually on one of our previous podcasts called Miranda Barrett, and she says that the only reason to speak is to change the world. That's the only reason we want to speak. I think that's such a big ask, and I certainly ask myself that sometimes. But when we're particularly looking for that emotional connection, that requires vulnerability. And so vulnerability can come through emotional connection by sharing your passion, by having the courage to share the stories, but do them in a very structured and very impactful way. So opening about my journey made sure that it allows hopefully audiences to connect with the human side of it. And so one of the things I know from speaking is you always start with the heart story and end with the heart story. And then you have content for intellectual things in the middle. So if I'm delivering a framework, that's not the start and the end, that's in the middle. If I'm delivering why we're doing this, that's either at the start or the beginning, usually at the start. The other thing was that I will have to be really open to feedback. So I got really excited my TED Talk, but I had to go, okay, that doesn't work, that doesn't land, that doesn't work. So getting and opening myself up to other people was really important. I also recognized that TEDx is also about storytelling the most and visuals. Because I had 12 minutes, I had to make a really hard decision. Do I use visuals or do I describe it in my storytelling so people can see their own version of the visual? I've always had slides. I've always had not many slides. So it's always been between 5 and 10 slides for an hour's presentation. But this time I chose to do nothing. So I decided that I would really look at the discipline of my body language, my visuals, from the way that I told my stories, and actually do that. And the other thing that I really learned was the fact that the work doesn't end after the talk. It's the starting point for amplifying my message. That talk has given me a lot of discipline to leverage. How do I use that? How do I share it? How do I use it in other things that you do? So you constantly want to be able to have a look at it. So the way that I summarized it in my head, giving that talk, was that passion plus discipline gives the impact. And passion without discipline is pointless. I hope you can apply that for something that you're about to give or you're preparing for, that you can apply and get your message to have more impact. Thanks for tuning in. Thank you for joining us on the Passion Institute podcast. If today's episode sparked a new idea or inspired you to maybe take some action or helped you see a business in a new light, we would love to hear from you. Don't forget to subscribe. It really helps us present a great show. Leave a review and share this episode with other fellow entrepreneurs and leaders who also are ready to make an impact. Remember, passion is the fuel for greatness, and every step you take brings you closer to your vision. Keep dreaming big, leading with purpose, and making waves in the world. Until next time, stay passionate, stay inspired, and keep building your legacy. This is your host, Shivani, and signing on from the Passion Institute podcast. See you soon.